So just before I start the talk, a couple of remarks about the talk itself. So it is some kind of strange beast in a couple of sense. The first of which is that it is some sort of presentation of project for a future research project. So that's kind of unusual, and I will be very, if you wish, kind of superficial with regard to at least the most kind of foundational theoretical side of the project, and mostly focused. It will be clear. It will become clearer in a bit on the so-called implementation part of the project. And the last thing that I'm kind of a bit concerned with is that I've not been able to go through my slide again, obviously. So it may be the case that there are some typos and there are some things that are not kind of well done. So my apologies for that if it happens. And also I'm using for the very first time this kind of Keynote app, which may be not really well. I mean, we'll see how it works. Okay, so, and thanks for tuning in. So first this has to start, and it does not. Just give me a sec. Maybe. Oh yeah, now it works. So as I said, this is a talk that is meant to kind of frame a project that I intend to use for a various grant application, and just to give you some kind of background info of what I have in mind, so you can kind of get an idea of the size of the project and what it means. It would be some kind of large project that would not only involve myself, and Rachel, you can take out the admitting room and so on. Okay, good. And so it is also meant so you have some sort of time scale in mind. It will be meant to last for 4 years or more. So you just have, because it would sound a bit bold otherwise. So the assumption that is made here, I cannot see my slides. Just give me a sec. I have to remove that, and I always lose my pointer. Okay, I will try to guess what is written, what I've written before that. So behind your lovely faces. So the assumption that I make is that conceptual engineering is about changing people's mind and the narratives that shape our world in order to make tangible difference in the big issues of our times. You can think, for example, of the SDGs. That's a bit bold. The rationale is for the project is that I take it that conceptual engineering still lacks of some sort of implementation strategy. What I mean by that is that the conceptual engineering is still not yet something that can be operationalized as a method to be run effectively on specific case studies. And the project precisely is meant to fill, if you wish, that applied knowledge gap. So, yeah, I have to change this because I'm very sorry about that. I cannot see anything on. Just I stop sharing that. Remove it here. I should put it here maybe and reduce that. Okay. Now that should be fine. Very sorry about this kind of things. And the overall goal for the project is then to make conceptual engineering an effective tool to achieve real-world changes with measurable impacts. And this overall goal itself is somehow divided, if you wish, into two different objectives, one of which is theoretical and the other is the applied one. And as I said before, when introducing my talk, during that talk, I will mostly focus on the applied bit of the project. But still, I will tell you something on the theoretical part, and the project itself, I forgot to mention it, is called an empirical method for applied conceptual engineering. So you get it. The first part is about this empirical method, and the second part is about the applied conceptual engineering bit. So the theoretical objective here is stated as follows. It is to devise the framework of conceptual engineering as a method for producing better concepts that are apt to be adopted by the relevant target user communities. And this theoretical objective is in turn made of three interdisciplinary scientific aims. The first of which concerns the engineering process itself. The aim here is to target or to obtain some sort of uptake-driven, if you wish, effective methodological framework for conceptual engineering. The question that is then addressed is that of how to design the method of conceptual engineering. And a strategy that I'm kind of using is to try to extract some sort of template out of the so-called engineering design process in the engineering sciences, and to next combine that template with what has been dubbed by Georg Brun, the Carnapian recipe for explicating concepts. And what I like in this idea of recipe is not only the stage process for conceptual engineering, for engineering concepts, but the fact that it is also made, as you certainly know, of a set of weighted criteria, in Carnap's case, of adequacy, in the case of a conceptual replacement or a conceptual revision. So I do not say much more on that. If you are interested in knowing more on what I do here, maybe, and if you have the time for that, you can attend the talk that I'll give next week at the seminar we have weekly at Arché, because I will go much more substantially into each details of the theoretical goals, theoretical aims of the project. So the proposal here that I have is to devise this 5-stage model of conceptual amelioration, which is both non-linear in the sense that there will be back and forth between the different stages of the process, and iterative in the sense that when you reach the last step of the process, you may end up having to go back to the first one. And I've dubbed it the dead-time model, which stands for description, first step, evaluation, design, test, and implementation. Again, I'm sorry, I cannot spell it in every details, but I will do that in next week's talk. So the second aim, scientific aim of the project concerns the target objects for conceptual engineering. And the aim here is to obtain target objects for conceptual engineering that are operationalizable. Sorry, it's hard to pronounce for me. And the question that is then addressed is that what should conceptual engineering be operating on? And my strategy here is to kind of come up with 3 main desiderata for conceptual engineering that would like the method to comply with, in order to compare the different options that are available on the table. These 3 desiderata are impact, which concerns the connection it has to people's mind, direct versus indirect, scope, and flexibility. And my proposal here, it is some sort of proposal about engineering what conceptual means or should mean in the label of conceptual engineering. My proposal here is that conceptual engineering should be about concepts psychologically theorized in as multiply realized functional kinds. I draw in that part of the project. It's what I've been doing for a while, but I draw a lot on, just to give you an idea, on Mashri's work, the 2009 book, and this kind of pluralist framework in the psychology of concepts, or psychologically informed philosophy of concept, if you wish. And so the project will be addressing at great length the last point of that proposal, and trying to come up with a sophisticated model, an operationalizable model of concepts psychologically theorized for the purposes of conceptual engineering. The project will also somehow be extended in another direction, namely the linguistic one that has been already touched upon by Stephanie in the previous talk. And it will be to abide by the same desiderata and to try to come up with some sort of linguistic model of concepts, drawing again on a very much empirically informed linguistics, but that might go back to some stuff that I just mentioned about some sort of structuralist linguistics and these kind of things. And what the kind of big change that will occur in this kind of opening of the project is that we'll then move to a communal level, whereas the psychological level, at least in a Macherian, in Mashri's framework, is very much individualistic. It focuses on the individuals, not on what is in between them. and it will also, this extension of the project is also expected to help us to handle issues such as that which concern so-called lexical effects. The last bit of the scientific aim, or the third scientific aim, is what I call the experimental assistance. The aim here is then that of connecting the engineering process that we'll have devised in the first phase of the project with the target object, the model for the psychological model of concepts, linguistic model of concepts. So the question is then how to apply the 5-stage model of conceptual engineering, the dead time model, to psychological and linguistic models of concepts. And the strategy will be to adapt the dead time model to psychological and linguistic models of concepts via the tools and techniques of experimental philosophy. That may sound a bit vague. So what I have in mind here is the method of cases, what Mashri has called in his latest book, method of cases 2.0, but as well what they do nowadays in EMFACE, such as corpus analysis in the case of linguistically modeled linguistic model of concepts, and many more. And by that, I have in mind what has been presented in a fantastic and brilliant talk given a couple of weeks ago by David Ludwig at the seminar, which uses in his project. He has 2 projects, and in both of them he relies a lot on non-quantitative but instead qualitative method in order to do in its framework conceptual analysis, but that can be transposed to the case of conceptual engineering. And I'm very much inclined into paying much more attention to what is usually done to that aspect of experimentally, empirically informed philosophy. So the proposal here would be to obtain some sort of fully X5 assisted in some sort of that's endos phrase, conceptual engineering. Let's call it XCE, as it has been dubbed by Kevin in his talk during earlier this semester at the seminar. And for example, you may have in mind that came up in the Q&A with Stefan's talk with the question by Eugen. In the case of the psychological model of concepts, the way in which you make them operational is that you focus on the defaultness condition that you can then spell out by a cluster of almost 3 homostatic properties: speed, automaticity, and context dependence, which may enable you to then track and distinguish or demarcate what is part of the concepts from what is part of the further background information you may have about some certain category of items in the outside world. So further exploratory issues. I'm not sure I'm dealing with the time, so just so maybe I speed up. So I do not read. There are many further exploratory issues that need to be addressed. The one that I listed here mostly concern the psychological model of concepts, but they can be kind of extended to the case of linguistic models of concepts. I take it, but obviously that's a project, and that's just even the beginning of the thinking of it. So now let's turn to what may be a bit more relevant, if you wish, to the kind of topic of this workshop. And that's the second part of the title of the project, Applied Conceptual Engineering. And I suspect that this might sound a bit kind of unusual for a philosophical project to go in this kind of direction. But yeah, I'm very happy to get any kind of feedback, criticism from you, because that's the purpose of presenting the project. So the applied objective for the project is to translate the new knowledge resources that we'll have devised with the theoretical objective, so that is methods, models of concepts, into innovative product and processes, and thereby make them available and suitable to social exploitation. So this applied objective is made of 2 interconnected strategies. I'll start with what they call in their jargon in Brussels and elsewhere, valorization strategies for research. So the valorization strategy is made of 2 steps. The first step will consist of a translational operation, which will amount to transforming the method of conceptual engineering into some sort of what I call template procedural framework. The target user communities will be what I call, again, professional concept users and producers. That will become a bit clearer in a bit, what I have in mind by these kind of people. And the model itself will be designed on the model of the so-called business model canvases, if you know what it is. And this model itself will be then supported by a set of pedagogic protocols in order for people, for the professional concept users and producers, to be taught how to use the model via online tutorials and practitioner workshops. To do that, obviously, I won't be alone because I cannot do that alone. I will be supported by a communication agency and by think tank, a specific think tank that work with so-called framework theories. So the second step of the valorization strategy is to apply the template framework to specific case studies. The type of case study that we aim to handle will be obviously of high social and or political significance. And how do we do that? Not myself or not ourselves. The people who will kind of supply us with these case studies will be our target user groups, namely think tanks, NGOs, and policymakers. And again, I will do that not myself, but with the huge support of a global platform for think tanks, and that is kind of serving as a hub for hundreds of think tanks across the world, and also in connection with several think tank hubs that you can find, in whole big cities. They have some in Geneva and in Zurich and elsewhere. So that these will be the people who will kind of supply with the relevant case studies. And so I next move to the second bit of the applied objective, which consists of the engagement strategy. That is, how do we get in touch with these people and how do we interact with them? So where will that work? So the purpose of the project is to design an intersectoral, connecting together academic research and non-academic research, intersectoral participatory forum for the continuous dialogue and application of the project's knowledge output, that is the model and the methodological framework. And the target audience or user group will be think tanks. And the reason why I chose them, I've been interacting with them for years, 5 years, something like that. And I've been in touch for a long while, interviewing them, loads of them and so on. And the reason why I'm very much interested in targeting them as opposed from policy entrepreneurs directly, for instance, which I've been in contact with too, is that think tanks have some sort of capacity to generate new evidence and knowledge that inform policymaking and shape the public debates. And how this platform will be organized, it will be organized in the form of rotating network of think tanks that will pertain to that global platform of think tanks that I've mentioned, and they will be organized into small communities of practice that share common agenda with regard to specific issue that are meant to be of high social and political significance. And again, I will be supported by that platform for think tanks, and they will act as dialogue facilitators, because it's not possible for, at least I cannot do that, for a kind of a professional or academic philosopher, as I aspire to be, to directly get in touch. I mean, it's very hard. You need some people helping you to develop a dialogue with these folks out there. Otherwise, it's really complicated. So there will be this kind of forum that will design how it will work. So the idea is to have an inclusive participatory model that will be kind of supported by a sustained two-way transfer of knowledge in the production of the research outputs. What this means is that the theoretical part of the project is meant to be very much informed and sensitive to inputs from its target audiences, which will provide the case studies. So the case studies will then serve as entry points for in-depth, sustained engagement with all the stakeholders of the project via continuous feedback and guidance that they will provide us with throughout the co-creation of the product of the project. And the case studies, that's very important too, will also serve us as impact indicator for the project. And the expected upshot of this kind of two-way transfer of knowledge, as they call it in their jargon too, is to kind of secure the usefulness, the suitability, and the uptake of the project knowledge outputs in the target user group, and thereby maximize the project's chances to influence them. And it's something that is very important because I'm sorry about that. Where I'm sorry, just gonna say, because it's something that you can at least the way I conceive of it, but I've been told that it's the case by them too. You cannot go as an academic to the outside world and tell them how they should do their work. It won't work. They will just won't listen to you, or just not get interested in collaborating with you. So you have to be very willing to receive feedback and guidance from them, and to work in this kind of co-creative way in the production of research output. So that's something I very much like this idea. So again, these won't be collaborators. There's slight differences between partners and collaborators. So the partners here will be the selected networks of think tanks that will work on some sort of rotating basis, and it may also involve some NGOs and policy entrepreneurs themselves. We'll see how it works. So and what is the product for them? So conceptual engineering for them works as a threefold tool. So first, an analytical tool, which is for them to more accurately understand the whys of policy and existing dominant narratives in a country or a sector, such as, for example, think of the deserving poor, the tragedy of the commons, and these kind of things. It will be also serve them as a strategic tool in order for them to more efficiently challenge prevailing arguments and narratives, or the ways in which policies have been formulated and implemented. And it will also help them to be more effective in their policy recommendations and in the way they want to inform the public, influence the public, and what they want to achieve. And again, I will be supported here by a team of communication experts and a consultancy for think tanks. And one thing that is important to note is that I did not come up myself with these three benefit that think tanks are expected to gain from the project. They told me why the project is interesting to them, and they told me, well, your project can do that for us. And I've no idea. I had no idea prior to engaging with them that conceptual engineering might be relevant with regard to these specific applied objectives, if you wish. So the last bit of that part is, how do you measure impact? Because it's very important for the whole project. Well, what we will do is to track, monitor, and record observable behavioral changes in the target user groups. And how does that work? Well, we will focus on the ways in which the uses of key concepts that are at stake in the selected case studies have changed the analytic, strategic, and operational work of the target user group. And you can do that via many different methods. The method that we'll use, I won't do that. People will be taught on. We'll collaborate, but people are expert on how to handle this kind of measurement. You can do that by a framework that is called outcome mapping. Another one is called logic model, that has been devised by Kellogg's, the guy from the cornflakes and the logician. And so that's it. And also something that is very important to have in mind, and I'm about to end the presentation, is that I'll be somehow provided with steering and guidance and advice by two different kinds of boards, a steering board and an advisory board, who will work as project evaluators, and will be made of the different collaborators for the project, partners as well, and some external, let's call them mentors. So that's basically it. I'm about to conclude. So what does the project do? Well, it partly builds new synergies between academic and non-academic research in the production of scientific knowledge. The project is partly meant to transform the way in which academic research engages inclusively with all of its stakeholders and set new trends for the production of research outcomes based on sustained two-way transfers of knowledge. It will promote a form of what they call citizen science. Maybe you wish to call it citizen research. It will promote, and thereby it will open new opportunities for conceptual engineering to reach bigger audiences. What I've in mind, especially, I can tell you much more about that, NGOs and policy entrepreneurs, in view of further social exploitation. And as I said, the ultimate goal is thereby to make conceptual engineering an effective tool to achieve real-world changes with measurable impact. And that's basically it. Well, and I thank you very much on this.